A 92-year-old medical professional with over 60 years of practice confidently states that the most challenging ordeal for people in their later years is the loss of leg stability. Once the lower limbs can no longer reliably support the body, the accustomed way of life begins to crumble. The sense of free movement disappears, autonomy is lost, and even basic locomotion becomes risky. Furthermore, the simple pleasure of a casual stroll becomes unattainable. The most alarming aspect is that this process doesn't occur suddenly. It develops gradually, starting with barely noticeable signs. Difficulty rising from a seated position, fatigue when trying to stand, increased frequency of stumbling, and uncomfortable pain while walking. However, according to the specialist, the greatest concern isn't these symptoms, but the fact that the vast majority of older adults unknowingly perform actions daily that, step by step, weaken their lower limbs. His knowledge isn't based on hearsay. He himself once believed this was a natural aging process. However, when he began to deeply study the causes of muscle weakness, he realized it wasn't solely about age. Age is just one component of the overall picture. The rest is a result of subtle but extremely harmful habits that, day by day, internally degrade the body, deplete muscle tissue, impair blood circulation, and accelerate overall bodily weakening. Statistical data confirms that over 60% of individuals past the age of 70 lose a significant portion of their leg muscle strength. This fact directly correlates with an increase in falls, injuries, hospitalizations, and in some cases, even premature death. If someone notices quick fatigue while walking, loss of balance, buckling legs, or difficulty climbing stairs, they're strongly advised to pause and listen carefully to their body. The specialist then promises to reveal the 6 most common mistakes that detrimentally affect the legs of older adults and, crucially, explain how to effectively avoid them. Finally, he will share a natural and easily accessible method he uses himself. This regimen helps strengthen muscles, improve circulation, and ensures his daily confidence in movement. Perhaps this valuable knowledge will help many regain the physical strength they once considered irretrievably lost. The first, and perhaps most critical, mistake the specialist highlights is prolonged static positioning without activating the lower limbs. Many people don't even realize that the most detrimental misconception, committed daily by older adults, is precisely extended periods of sitting without sufficient leg movement. At first glance, there seems to be nothing unusual about this. A person wakes up, has breakfast, and settles in front of the television. This is followed by lunch, then a short nap, and in the evening, it's back to the chair, armchair, or sofa, interrupted only occasionally by the need to go to the kitchen or bathroom. It might seem that there's nothing critical about this, as the person isn't lying down. They're sitting, conscious, perhaps reading, talking, or doing something with their hands. However, this is where the insidious trap lies. For the human body, especially in old age, prolonged sitting sends a clear signal. The need for movement is gone. When the body doesn't need something, it begins to deactivate the corresponding functions. Leg muscles that aren't used regularly are perceived by the body as superfluous. And what does it do with what it considers superfluous? It degrades them to conserve energy resources. This initiates a process known as sarcopenia, a gradual, barely perceptible loss of muscle tissue. This imperceptible degradation doesn't manifest instantly. Its consequences become apparent only after months and years. By then, a person might find they can no longer stand up from chair without external support, experience excessive fatigue, even from a short trip to the store, or begin to stumble on flat surfaces. The reason is that in a seated position, a minimal number of muscle groups are activated. The lower limbs are at rest, experiencing no tension and bearing no weight. Thus, day by day, the body gradually loses the ability to fully use the legs for their intended purpose. However, the detrimental impact isn't limited to muscle atrophy alone. A second, equally serious blow to leg health is impaired blood circulation. Prolonged sitting, especially in an unchanging posture, leads to blood stagnation in the lower body, in the feet, shins, and thighs. Veins expand and blood flow slows, resulting in oxygen deprivation in muscle tissues. Such disturbances manifest as a feeling of heaviness in the legs, a sensation as if the limbs are filled with lead, the onset of cramps, tingling, and pronounced stiffness when attempting to stand. Many may have observed this phenomenon. After seemingly calm sitting, trying to stand up requires swaying. The legs poorly obey and fail to provide the necessary support. The specialist emphasizes that this is not a sign of inevitable aging, but a direct consequence of prolonged immobility. With age, this situation becomes even more dangerous because the body's regenerative capabilities decline and it can no longer cope with blood stagnation as effectively as it did in younger years. Scientific research confirms these findings. For instance, a publication in the reputable Journal of Aging and Physical Activity demonstrated that older adults who spend more than 6 hours a day sitting face a 44% higher risk of losing lower limb function, even if they maintain physical activity during the rest of the day. In other words, even regular morning walks do not negate the risks if the remainder of the day is spent sitting, as prolonged inactivity triggers processes in the body that are extremely difficult to reverse later on. The specialist himself admits that he, too, previously mistakenly believed this was merely a manifestation of age. He spent a lot of time sitting with a book, studying articles, responding to correspondence, and taking phone calls, convincing himself, "I'm mentally active. I'm not just lying down." However, over time, he began to notice it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to stand up. His legs seemed to stop obeying, and he felt a growing loss of stability. Initially, these were rare episodes, but then they started recurring almost daily. Only after an in-depth study of scientific data did he realize this was not an inevitable consequence of old age, but the result of the detrimental habit of prolonged sitting without movement. So, what should be done in such a situation? The key task is to prevent the body from deciding that it no longer needs its legs. This doesn't require exhausting physical exertion. It's enough to integrate simple movement activities into your daily routine. The doctor himself started by setting reminders to stand up every 45 to 50 minutes, even if it just meant walking around the room or standing by a window. After each meal, he took a short walk lasting at least 3 to 5 minutes. Several times a day, he practiced standing up and sitting down from a chair without using his hands. Sometimes it was simply marching in place while standing in front of the sink, a mirror, or by the bed. The secret to success lies not in the intensity of the exercises, but in their regularity. This is a unique way to inform the body, "I still need my legs, and I'm actively using them." In summary, the following key points should be understood. Prolonged sitting is detrimental to leg strength. Immobility is an enemy of healthy circulation. Sarcopenia originates not so much from diseases as from daily habits. The body quickly loses functions that are not used. The more often a person stands and moves, the longer they will be able to maintain the ability to move independently. Moving on to the second common, yet often underestimated, mistake that older adults make almost daily, the specialist identifies insufficient protein intake. He emphasizes that he speaks from personal experience. Many years ago, he was convinced his diet was correct. Small portions of rice, beans, vegetables, grains, a light dinner. Everything seemed to meet the norms. And, as he then believed, it was perfectly sufficient. However, over time, he began to notice his legs losing their former strength. He had no serious conditions like diabetes, significant joint problems, or cardiovascular pathologies. He simply tired more quickly. Climbing stairs became a more difficult task. A slight instability appeared when walking. Initially, his thought was, "It's just age." But he later realized the true cause lay deeper. His muscles simply lacked adequate nutrition, specifically the key building block, protein. It's important to note that, contrary to popular belief, the body's protein requirement does not decrease with age. It actually increases. As we age, the body's natural repair processes slow down. Muscle tissue begins to break down faster than it can regenerate. What was self-sustaining in youth now requires active external support. This essential support comes from adequate protein nutrition. When a diet lacks sufficient protein, the body loses its ability to repair already lost muscle fibers. Muscles gradually weaken, overall body stability decreases, leg tremors appear, difficulties arise when trying to stand, and the risk of fall significantly increases. This is a direct path to sarcopenia, a gradual and imperceptible loss of muscle mass that can ultimately lead to a complete loss of independent mobility. Many older adults consume little food for a variety of reasons: lack of appetite, dental problems, economic considerations, ingrained eating habits, or fear of overeating. Some avoid meat products, considering protein-heavy food, or rely solely on plant-based diets without sufficient understanding of the need for balanced nutrient intake. All these factors lead to muscles simply being deprived of the necessary building material. Without enough protein, it's impossible not only to build new muscle mass, but even to maintain existing muscle. The situation is exacerbated by the natural decline in the efficiency of muscle protein synthesis in old age. Even with the same level of physical activity and diet as before, the body no longer handles this task as effectively. Therefore, simply eating as before is no longer sufficient. It's essential to approach nutrition consciously, considering the new needs of the aging body. Research published in the journal Clinical Nutrition convincingly showed that older adults who consume less than 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight per day have a significantly higher risk of developing muscle weakness, balance problems, and consequently, falls. And a fall in old age is not just a bruise or contusion. It carries a serious risk of fracture, necessitates hospitalization, and, most importantly, leads to a loss of independence. The specialist himself confirmed this through his own experience. When he revised his diet and increased his protein intake, positive results were not long in coming. Within a couple of weeks, he felt it became significantly easier to stand up. The inexplicable uncertainty in his step that plagued him in the mornings disappeared. The sensation that his legs weren't supporting him vanished. Since then, he always includes protein in every meal, and this doesn't require special effort or expensive products. It's simple, accessible, and effective. For breakfast, he recommends a boiled egg with a piece of low-fat cheese or natural yogurt with oatmeal. For lunch, a portion of boiled or baked meat, chicken, turkey, fish, or even a little stewed ground meat with vegetables. Throughout the day, one can snack on a handful of nuts or a piece of whole grain bread with hummus. For dinner, something light, such as chicken broth with an egg or oatmeal with milk. Sometimes, cottage cheese with a spoonful of honey. This isn't a strict diet or harsh restriction. It's a thoughtful approach designed to provide the body with everything necessary to maintain mobility, stability, and strength. It's crucial to understand. Without protein, muscles cannot function properly. They become fragile, sluggish, and vulnerable. When muscles weaken, the legs are the first to feel it. They stop adequately supporting the body, balance is disrupted, and overall endurance decreases. Along with this, freedom, autonomy, and the ability to live without assistance are irrevocably lost. Don't wait until strength is completely depleted. It's much easier to preserve it now than to try to restore it later. The first step is simply to ask yourself, am I getting enough protein every day to keep my muscles working? The answer to this question can determine whether a person will stand confidently on their feet in the coming years or become confined to a chair, dependent on others. Leg strength isn't just about movement. It's about dignity, freedom, and the power of choice. And choice begins with nutrition. Moving on to the third common mistake. The specialist emphasizes nutrition that provokes inflammatory processes and impairs blood circulation in muscle tissues. Many years ago, like most people, he didn't consider how much the contents of his plate could affect leg health. White bread in the morning, a plate of rice or pasta for lunch, processed meats, a little sweet, carbonated drinks on weekends, nothing unusual. This is how millions of older adults eat. It seems normal. However, over the years, he began to notice strange changes. His legs felt heavier, they tired faster. Walks that once brought pleasure now felt difficult. After every outing, prolonged rest was required. Initially, the specialist believed this was a natural manifestation of age, that muscles were simply weakening. However, later, after studying numerous studies and consulting with colleagues, he realized the true cause was right in front of him, on his plate. The essence of the problem is that certain foods provoke inflammatory processes in muscles and worsen blood circulation. They act subtly, gradually, day by day, month by month. They don't cause immediate pain or make themselves known right away. But these are the very foods that gradually destroy what recently supported the body, muscles, and legs. Such foods include refined flour, white bread, various pastries, buns, excessive sugar, candies, cookies, sugary drinks, and store-bought desserts. This list also includes fried foods, especially those cooked in refined oil, processed meats and cold cuts, carbonated and sugary drinks with additives, and ready-made and factory-produced foods rich in preservatives, flavor enhancers, and trans fats. These products significantly increase inflammatory processes in the body. Substances accumulate in muscle tissues that hinder their recovery and impair oxygen saturation. Blood stagnates, especially in the lower extremities. Veins expand, tissues lose elasticity, and oxygen and nutrients do not reach the muscles in sufficient quantities. The result is a feeling of heaviness, stiffness, and weakness in the legs. Even a short walk causes fatigue. Climbing stairs becomes a real challenge. The most important thing is that people often don't connect these sensations with nutrition. It seems that the legs are just aging and nothing can be changed. However, this is a mistaken belief. A study published in the journal Inflammation Research showed that older adults whose diet is rich in ultra-processed foods have significantly higher levels of inflammatory markers in muscle tissue. Moreover, these individuals exhibit worse performance in strength and stability tests. This means an increase in falls, hospitalizations, and a decrease in independence. When the specialist realized the price he was paying for his habitual food preferences, he began to change, starting small. He replaced white bread with real whole grain products with a minimal number of ingredients. He eliminated sugar from his diet and started using fruits instead: bananas, cooked apples, a few dried fruits. He gave up store-bought sweets and began preparing desserts himself from simple and understandable ingredients. Instead of fried dishes, he started preferring baked or boiled ones. Processed meats were replaced with boiled chicken, fish, turkey, or homemade meat. He also added root vegetables, greens, eggs, olive oil, and various grains to his diet. These simple steps required neither significant financial outlay nor special culinary knowledge. But the result was astonishing. Within a few days, he felt his legs become lighter, and the constant swelling disappeared. Movement felt easier, morning stiffness passed, and pain in his knees and calves decreased. This was no accident. It was the body's reaction to care. The body is capable of recovering even at 70, 80, or 90 years old, but it needs to not be hindered. Improper nutrition acts like removing a block that prevents normal blood circulation and muscle recovery. It's important to realize muscles cannot be healthy if there is chronic inflammation in the body. Even if a person regularly exercises and tries to maintain physical activity, if their diet provokes inflammation, all that work is in vain. Therefore, if one wishes to maintain leg strength, they should start by reviewing the contents of their plate. Open the refrigerator, look in the bread box, and ask themselves, will this food give me strength or take it away? The answer to this question can be a turning point. Legs are not just muscles. They are a person's support, path, and freedom. And often, all that's required to restore their strength is to stop feeding them what destroys them from within. Moving on to the fourth common mistake, the specialist points to the misconception that hand movements are sufficient for maintaining overall body activity. Many older adults mistakenly believe that if they are busy with household chores, cleaning, cooking, reading, handicrafts, or using the phone, they're already active enough and keeping their body in shape. Such activities certainly contribute to maintaining some degree of mobility, but they are by no means equivalent to full physical activity aimed at strengthening the lower extremities. The reason is that leg strength and health directly depend on the intensity and regularity of using precisely these body parts. To maintain the muscles of the pelvis, thighs, knees, and feet in optimal condition, it is necessary to purposefully walk, stand up, squat, and climb stairs, even if it only takes a few minutes a day. Without regular load, leg muscles begin to weaken, lose their body-supporting function, and their ability to maintain stability. Physiologists call this phenomenon local muscle hypoactivity. The body perceives unused muscles as unnecessary and begins to conserve energy by reducing muscle mass precisely in those areas that are not engaged. This process occurs gradually, almost imperceptibly, but its consequences can be extremely serious. When leg muscles weaken, gait becomes slower and more uncertain. The risk of stumbling and falling significantly increases. Falls are one of the main causes of serious injuries, hospitalizations, and a significant decline in the quality of life for older adults. Fractures pose a particular danger, potentially leading to prolonged immobility and even disability. Scientific studies confirm the severity of this problem. One such study, published in the journal Gerontology, showed that older adults who remain active only in hand movements, such as cleaning, knitting, or working with documents, but do not perform targeted leg exercises, lose lower limb function significantly faster. The quadriceps muscles, the four-headed thigh muscle, and the stabilizing muscles of the ankle are particularly affected. These muscles are precisely responsible for stability and safety when walking. In his personal experience, the specialist also became convinced of how important it is to consciously work on leg strength. To this end, he incorporated simple exercises into his daily routine that do not require special equipment or much time, but yield excellent results. In the morning, he takes a light walk around the house or in the yard, trying to make his steps confident and smooth. In the evening, he performs several exercises that help activate leg muscles, standing up and sitting down from a chair without using his hands, and stepping up and down one stair. Sometimes he simulates walking in place for 10 to 15 minutes. These simple actions are not a gym workout, but a way to show the body that the legs are still important, that they need to be maintained and developed. And the body responds. Muscles strengthen, balance improves, and movements become more confident and effortless. Consistency is key. Without regularity, even the most effective exercises will not yield long-term results. But by performing these simple steps every day, one can slow down and sometimes even stop the process of muscle weakness and loss of balance. This is why it's important to stop believing that hand activity can replace full leg work. Legs are the foundation of our freedom and mobility, the support we rely on daily. If they lose strength, one's entire life suffers. Therefore, one should care for them as seriously as for the health of the entire body. Moving on to the fifth mistake, the specialist draws attention to ignoring posture and proper body alignment when walking, sitting, and standing. Often, older adults underestimate the importance of posture. It seems to be merely a matter of appearance. How elegantly a person stands, whether they slouch or hold their head straight. In reality, posture is much more than just an external image. It is the fundamental basis for the correct distribution of load and force throughout the body. When posture is compromised, the body begins to function incorrectly. With age, this becomes particularly dangerous, as incorrect body positioning increases the load specifically on the legs, knees, hip joints, and back muscles. This leads to accelerated joint wear, the appearance of pain, reduced balance, and decreased functional strength. Many older adults gradually develop a habit of slouching, dropping their shoulders, leaning more on one leg, or dragging one leg when walking. They may rise from a chair with excessive effort, using their arms rather than their legs. All these seemingly minor details are actually micro habits that cause serious harm. Poor posture leads to improper weight distribution. Instead of the load being evenly distributed across both legs, one side takes on more tension. This causes uneven joint wear, intensifies pain, and significantly increases the risk of losing balance. A study published in the journal Geriatric Physical Therapy convincingly showed that older adults with chronically poor posture are 48% more likely to lose muscle mass in their legs and are much more prone to falls, even in familiar home environments. In the specialist's own case, to correct the situation, he had to relearn how to hold his body correctly and constantly monitor his posture. He started with simple but extremely important changes in his daily life. He learned to sit with both feet firmly on the floor, avoiding crossing his legs or letting them dangle. When getting up from a chair, he began to use his leg strength, pushing off with them rather than relying on his arms on the armrests. While walking, he tries to look straight ahead, keep his shoulders slightly open and relaxed, and his abdominal muscles slightly engaged to support his torso. These simple but regular adjustments significantly improved his stability and reduced pain in his legs and joints. It's important to understand that posture is not just a beautiful pose, but a fundamental foundation upon which the entire body rests. If it is compromised, the legs will be the first to feel excessive strain and begin to give out. However, if a person learns to hold their body correctly, the load will be distributed evenly, joints and muscles will work more efficiently, and the risk of injury will significantly decrease. Therefore, if one feels that their legs have become weaker or are failing them, they should pay attention not only to nutrition and exercise, but also to how they sit, stand, and walk. Small changes in posture can have a big effect and restore former strength and stability to the legs. Moving on to the sixth mistake, the specialist calls it perhaps the most insidious and destructive, as its root lies not in the body, but in the mind. Many older adults, after falls, constant pain, or even just fatigue when walking, begin to believe that nothing can be changed, that weakness is an inevitable and irreversible sentence, that training their legs is useless, and it's time to accept decline. Unfortunately, this thought often becomes a true sentence that triggers a whole chain of deterioration. However, the truth is that the body does age, but it does not stop responding to stimuli even at a very old age, at 80, 90, or 100 years old. Muscles retain the ability to become stronger if they receive the right load and support. When a person stops using their legs, the body perceives this as a signal that these structures are not needed and begins to shut them down. The process known as learned helplessness is a vicious cycle. Lack of movement leads to muscle atrophy. Weakness causes insecurity, and the fear of falling leads to even less use of the legs. Thus, many lose strength not due to age, but due to a lack of stimulation and activity. A study published in the journal Age and Aging observed older adults up to 90 years old who, under medical supervision, began performing light leg strengthening exercises. The results were impressive. Over 80% of participants regained strength, balance, and the ability to walk safely for longer distances in just a few weeks. From his experience, the specialist can say that in addition to the simple exercises he discussed earlier, he recommends starting each day with a simple question to oneself. What can I do today to prove that I'm still in control of my legs? This could be anything: walking to the gate and back, standing for 5 seconds without support, or slowly and confidently descending one stair. The second step is to keep a journal or leave a visible note with the phrase, "Today I moved, today I didn't give up." This approach transforms one's inner beliefs, helps restore self-control and faith in one's own abilities, and effectively counters the emotional component of decline that often accompanies the aging process. Indeed, the most insidious form of paralysis in old age manifests not so much as physical helplessness, but as emotional stagnation. Therefore, if a person feels a loss of their former strength, they're strongly advised to immediately begin dismantling this destructive belief. One should not passively await the return of strength. Instead, it is necessary to actively move for that strength to reappear. When such a positive psychological mindset is harmoniously combined with regular simple daily exercises, maintaining proper posture, and leading an active lifestyle, significant improvements in circulation, restored stability, and, consequently, a resurgence of self-confidence are observed.